Yo, what's going on out there, Elite Mafia? This is Benny Ricciardi here, hosting the opening line today for our main man, Corey Parsons, who is out doing some stuff today. He had a little bit to go. But you guys are in good hands because I invited my boy Armando Marçal from the Fantasy Guru site and Guru Elite and Elite Fantasy and Elite Sports Betting and all the other sites that they keep popping up under our same umbrella right now. Yo, what's going on this morning, Armando?
Man, it's Friday. We're talking football. We had a little bit of a conversation before. Man, life is good, dude. We're just here talking sports. It doesn't get better than this, man. Looking forward to doing the show. I hopped on Corey when you were traveling Europe, and it was a good time, man. I really enjoyed watching the show, and then even more so being on it, man.
Yeah, a lot of us that work together, like Armando and I we've worked together at various other places before we came over here to Elite, and he used to do a podcast that I actually hopped on once or twice back in the day talking football. So this is not the first rodeo for us. This is not the first time we've sat here and broken down the slate and kind of gone over everything. But that's one of the things I loved about this company in general. I mean, a lot of the guys that we work with here are guys that we're friends with in real life anyway. So basically what we're doing is we're just turning the camera on and kind of giving you guys the same discussions we usually have over, Skype and Twitter and Slack and everything else right now. Because I know I learn a lot when we sit through and kind of go through it with everybody. Different guys that are looking at the same things are going to see different angles on stuff. And there may be, you may be high on somebody because of something that I wasn't thinking about or vice versa, which is why I think this is always a good exercise to go through the slate with somebody else who's looked at it independently. And, this way it might change your mind on some things or reinforces what usually winds up happening on some things that I like. So me and you talking a little bit of football should be fun today. Let's get into it. Yeah, let's start right at the top. We do talk sports betting as well here. So if there's a line you like or an over-under or something you like, throw that out there too. We'll get into the fantasy stuff, obviously, as you and I are both fantasy guys. And hopefully we'll help everybody out there make some money today. So let's get into it right now. First game I want to talk about, Philadelphia Eagles, Buffalo Bills. Buffalo currently is favored by 2 points. Over-under on this game is 43. Talk to me about Philly and Buffalo. What do you like? What don't you like? And what do you see happening here?
I like the passing game for Buffalo here. We know Philly has struggled all season long. They're a funnel defense. We refer to them as a funnel defense where they're stout against the run, struggle immensely against the pass. So you got to like John Brown. You got to like Josh Allen. Even to a certain extent, Cole Beasley. I know there's not a ton of upside there, but a pretty safe floor. So you got to like the passing game there for them. I kind of like the over in this game. I know weather might be an issue there. It might play a role into this, but I like the over here. The Eagles offense is what really concerns me. I've been trying to stay off them recently. They're just not looking good. They're really not looking good without Deshaun Jackson. I think also it has to do with the play calling here. It just looks like an offense that's lost, to be honest with you. I had higher expectations for them. So I don't think it's a game I'm going to have a ton of exposure to in DFS. Maybe someone like John Brown have in some tournament lineups, but I think he's fairly priced. So aside from that, it's not a game I'm have a ton of exposure. I don't think I'm going to bet this game. If I do, maybe the over, but I don't think I'm going to be betting this game, man.
Yeah, I mean, John Brown, I think, is the guy who stands out the most. I actually expect him to be kind of chalky this week. You can beat this Philly Eagles defense deep. You can get over the top against them, and he does seem to be the guy who profiles the best as somebody who can take the top off of defense. To build on what you were saying with the Eagles being a little bit of a little bit underperformance this year, pretty much across the board. One of the things that people aren't really talking about, the Eagles are playing at the slowest pace in the league this year. And that's a big deal because the slower the pace, the less plays you get off, the less chances these guys have to do whatever they want to do for fantasy. One thing I will say about the Eagles side of the football this week, it is very tough to throw the ball to the outside against the Buffalo Bills. I do not expect, Alshon Jeffrey to have a good game this week. He's going to be locked up with Tre'Davious White for most of that game over there on the side. You got to think if Philly's going to move the ball, it's probably going to be through the middle. The tight ends being guys that I think you can look at, both of them. Dallas Goedert last week catching the big touchdown. I know Zach Ertz hasn't had a Zach Ertz kind of year, but he's still like top 5 in the league in targets. He's got 35 catches, which is actually not a lot considering he has like 60 targets or something, 55, 60 targets. He hasn't put up the yardages and the numbers and all that from last year, but I don't think anything's wrong with him. There are certain guys that you look at and you're like, you know what, he's not playing well and there's a reason. I don't think there's really a major reason. I think it's just kind of been, the whole offense has underperformed a little bit, and that has tanked him too. I'm not going to play a lot of Ertz, but I don't think he's crazy if you want to throw him into a tournament. And I kind of agree with you. When it comes to sports betting side of it, I don't really have a major lean in this game either way. I wouldn't be shocked if Philly bounces back and, puts up a good game because they have been underperforming, and I think they're a better team than we've seen. This is one of those games where if you told me, hey, you have to pick a underdog money line to play this week, Philly would be one that I'd consider. But honestly, I'm not going and betting on this game. So let's talk about the Giants against the Lions. So you got New York going into Detroit. Detroit is a 6.5-point favorite. The over-under on this game is 49.5. And we do have some injury news to talk about here. Sterling Shepard is going to be out again this week. He hasn't played the last couple weeks, so not that big a deal. Saquon Barkley is somebody we can talk about. He's supposed to be playing, but it looks like he's not 100%. They say he may even be on a little bit of a pitch count here. So he might not play the whole time. We don't know what's going to go on. There's a couple guys in that Detroit defense, Darius Slay being the one that I'm most interested in seeing if he plays or not, because he is one of the best cornerbacks in the league, in my opinion. So there's a lot of moving parts in this game. But, again, Lions favored by 6.5, over-under 49.5. You got to think we're going to see some production for fantasy, right?
Yeah, this is a situation where, look, the first person that stands out to me is Ty Johnson, who's going to be in for the injured Kerryon Johnson. I think that's going to be the massive chalk at his price, under 5K on DK. I'm not sure his price on FanDuel, but I'm assuming it's going to be relatively cheap as well here. So you got to like him against a really bad Giants defense. Without Shepard, you got to like Golden Tate. I know Evan Ingram struggled last week, but listen, I'm not expecting him to struggle again. On the other side here, and when you look at the Lions, Kenny Golladay stands out as well. There's just so much to like here from a fantasy standpoint from both sides. Even Stafford. I think Stafford is someone you really can plug in and play this week. He's someone I've been talking about as a streaming option in season-long leagues as well. So tons of to like from both sides. From the Vegas standpoint, though, and from the betting standpoint, honestly, betting, man, what I want to do here is kind of wait and see what happens. Wait and see what happens with some of these injuries that we're waiting on. Are we going to get a full go from Barkley? If we do that, I think that changes things. Is Slade going to play? I think that changes the playing field quite a bit. I don't think it's going to do much from the Vegas standpoint, maybe a half a point here and there. But I do definitely think that it would change where I stand from the betting perspective. I do believe, though, that this game will produce plenty of fantasy goodness. I might even, Danny Dimes might even be someone you can consider if you're, trying to toss someone out there that might go overlooked after a week like last week. But I do respect this Lions defense a little bit or enough not to really feel too excited about him. I'd rather just go with the role players from each side here. And for Detroit, I wouldn't be surprised if they pass the ball a little bit more now with Kerryon Johnson's sideline.
Yeah, so here's what I want to talk about in this game, and I want to kind of get your opinion on this, right? You mentioned two guys this week that were chalk last week and missed badly as chalk. One of them being Kenny Golladay when we saw the Marvin Jones game with the 4 touchdowns and him going off. The other one being Evan Ingram, who had the dream matchup against the Arizona Cardinals, who have basically just been handing out, fantasy points to tight ends so far on the season. And I think he finished with 1 catch for like 6 yards. Now, again, the weather was a little bad. It wasn't the greatest thing. I mean, you could always make excuses for guys. But here's the thing I wanted to talk about with you for fantasy, right? These are two guys that last week were chalk. Golladay was 15+% owned, close to 20% in some places. Evan Ingram was 20%, maybe even more in some places last week, because of that matchup here. How do you think them having, for lack of any other way to say it, shit games last week, both of them, how do you think that's going to affect them this week? Because I know there's a lot of people who have that recency bias. And to me, when you're looking at it, both of these guys still seem like they're in good spots again. Are you willing to go and forgive the bad game last week? And what are the kind of things you look at in that situation when it's like, well, am I willing to forgive this? Or do I think that was the beginning of, me not playing Evan Ingram and Kenny Golladay anymore?
Yeah, look, listen, I don't go back on last week. This is a new week for me. Sometimes that's going to happen. A player is going to be in a great spot, and he's just not going to perform. We've been playing DFS for a while. We've seen that happen time in and time out every single week. It happens every week, man. Look, this is a smash spot for Golladay. And aside from, his performance last week where he let down a lot of people are also going to be playing Ty Johnson this week. And there's that negative correlation of playing the running back and the receiver for the same team. And when you look at this matchup, he has DeAndre Baker. I mean, one of the best corner matchups he can have here. If you look at his grade at PFF, it's under 40, which is extremely low. So look, this is a week where I think Golladay makes for an excellent tournament leverage play because not only is he going to be low owned, he's in a smash spot. But a lot of people are going to be playing Ty Johnson. I personally don't mind playing both of them together in one lineup. And if you just want to stack the line side, I'm all for it. We know Ty Johnson can catch passes anyways out of the backfield, so this makes for a really good stack. As far as Evan Ingram is concerned, look, that game, I watched it because unfortunately that was one of the few games that was on my TV during that that Sunday. Mm-hmm. And it was a sloppy game. It really was a sloppy game all around. The rain didn't help, not to excuse, the performances, but it really did not help. We know the type of tight end Evan Ingram is. We know his upside. We know his ceiling. And we know that he is going to demand a lot of the work in the passing game. And when you expect them to chase points like I do, like I'm assuming you do as well, and like Vegas suggests, he's going to get the ball here. So I'm expecting a ton of usage again for him. And in a position that is very volatile, I think he provides you a pretty safe floor. And I just look at last week as an outlier for him.
Yeah, my one beef, though, being the guy who writes the tight end article, which is actually up this morning on EliteFantasy.com for all you DFS guys this week. My one beef with him is the price. He had a couple good games. We knew he was going to have an increased role this year, right? Because we saw him the last month of the season without Odell Beckham last year. We saw the role increase. The targets went up, the catches went up, the yardage totals were 75, 80 every game, if not more. So we knew he was going to have a big role this year. The problem I have is he's now priced like he's Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz, George Kittle from last season, where he's $2,000 on DraftKings more expensive than some of these other guys who might see maybe not as many targets, but similar spots, similar targets. And on FanDuel, I think he's like the second or third highest priced tight end of the week right now. So I agree with you. I still like Evan Ingram, still a guy that I'd roll. Love Kenny Golladay. He's a guy that I'm willing to go back to this week. Just remember, with the tight end, you're not getting as much of a bargain right now. And Golden Tate is a guy who I like a lot in the slot as well. So those are things I'm looking at for this Giants-Lions game. Next game, Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Los Angeles Rams. Two teams that really aren't playing all that well, in my opinion. But I shouldn't say aren't well. Like, the Rams are doing okay, but they're underperforming where I think a lot of people thought they would be. And Cincinnati, you really can't get much worse. I mean, honestly, if the Miami Dolphins weren't in the league this year, we might be talking about Cincinnati the way we talk about Miami as like a historically bad team. I mean, they have like the lowest run yards per attempt this year. They're giving up a ton of yards on the ground. I mean, they're losing games by double-digit points even at home. The Rams are at home in this one, favored by 12.5, 47.5 over under. What are your thoughts on Cincinnati and LA?
Oh man, this is one of those games where you really want to have interest on the Rams side, especially the running game. But I'm a little bit hesitant because of what we've seen, the inconsistency, from the run game for this offense season long here. So if I'm going to go here, I'm really going to go with someone like Cooper Kupp, because I really think that if they're going to blow them out, he's going to have something to do with it. He's clearly Jared Goff's favorite target. I know his price is a little steep. But he just offers the perfect combination of a very safe floor and plenty of upside. I for season-long purposes, I was very high on him heading into the season. I was high on him last year. He's just a receiver that I think is so good and so underrated, especially for what he does in his offense. So you really got to like them. Obviously, Goff is in a great spot, a little priced up here. The receiving core for the Rams, all in good spots, but very difficult to, decipher who's going to get the work outside of Kupp. Is it going to be Brandon Cooks for a home run hit? Is it going to be Woods, who is also a pretty safe floor on most weeks? We just don't know, really. So I'm going to lean Kupp. I really wish we knew, if we knew, okay, Gurley's going to touch the ball 20 times. I think that would be a slam dunk play right there, too, because It's just a good spot for him. Cincinnati really struggles defensively. And the game script, in my opinion, is going to favor the Rams here. Look, from the Bengals side, Auden Tate, Tyler Boyd seem like the guys you might want to plug in. I'm not buying into the Erickson stuff. Yeah, it's something to watch, but it's only been 2 weeks. He's ran in most of his routes in the last 2 weeks. When you look at the first, 5 games of the season, 4 games of the season, he really was barely involved here, and not a ton has changed. Mixon can't run the ball with that offensive line. I believe they get someone back this week, but I don't think it's going to be helpful enough, and I don't think the game script's going to be. So the Bengals side is not really one I'm looking into this week. From a betting point, I in the NFL, I don't like taking spreads this high, man. I try to avoid them. Because even though, like you mentioned, the Rams have not been playing elite football like we expected them to, so in a professional team like the Bengals, man, yeah, they suck, to be honest with you, but they can cover that, I think. So I try to stay away from those big spreads, man. I've been doing so all season long.
Yeah, the 12.5, 13 points, depending on where you're looking, is a big number. I am a little worried. I expect the Rams to win this game, but I am a little worried about a backdoor cover where they're up, 17 points at the end of the game, and they just play prevent defense, and, Tyler Boyd sneaks in there over the middle and puts in a touchdown. I do like teasing this down, though. I teased it down to 6.5, took it as part of a couple teasers that I'm in there. I just think Cincinnati is – we talk about Miami and the 15, 17-point spreads they're seeing every game as being like, normal. I think Cincinnati should have the same kind of spread. So if you're only going to give me 12 or 13 and I can tease it down to 6 or 7, I expect them to lose this game by at least 6 or 7 on the road. One thing I will say, with Jalen Ramsey on the Los Angeles Rams right now, it might not be good for the outside receiver. So that'll probably be Auden Tate actually over there that Ramsey may match up with often. I think that kind of forces this to be a little more of a Tyler Boyd game. So if you're choosing between Cincinnati receivers in this game, maybe to bring it back on like a Rams stack where you have Goff and a couple of the pass catchers over there, I think Tyler Boyd's the guy I want to do that with. Also, don't sleep on and don't forget about Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett had a bad game against San Francisco 2 weeks ago, but the other 3 games that he's played recently, 15-plus fantasy points, averaging close to 10 targets. This guy has become a decent part of this Rams offense, and I think it's kind of coincided with the targets we've seen dropping for guys like Cooks on the outside and Robert Wood, who really are underperforming this year. So just keep that in mind when you're putting together lineups on this one. Next game. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Yeah. I was agreeing with you, man. I was agreeing with you there because I missed on every. That's you see, like there's a perfect example, man. When you talk it through with someone, I missed on that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's why I like doing this, like I learn as much from doing this with other people as I do from, doing my own research. And the more information you have, the better lineups you're going to be able to build at the end of the week. That's why everybody out there sits here and watches the show for a half hour too, because we basically take a whole week's worth of knowledge and try to throw it all together in 30 minutes. So this way you guys can make some money. And speaking of making money, next game, Arizona Cardinals, New Orleans Saints. Saints favored by 10. They're at home, over under a 48. Couple things we got to look at on the injury front here. David Johnson looks unlikely to play. Could make it another Chase Edmonds week, although it's not as easy a matchup as he had last week to produce in. We don't know what's going to happen with guys like Drew Brees and Alvin Kamara yet either. Again, Teddy Bridgewater's been playing really well. Latavius Murray stepped in, and they didn't seem to miss a beat last week with this New Orleans offense against Chicago. So might not be the worst thing. They do have the bye next week, so maybe they decide to keep those guys out another week. This way they have this week, they have the bye next week, bring them all back in week 10 to make your run to the Super Bowl. This New Orleans Saints team is very, very good. People aren't talking about it. They're basically 6-1 right now, and they played half the season with a bunch of backups. I don't know. I mean, Arizona's been a team that gives up a lot of points. What are you looking at in this game?
So this is the thing. This is a game where, all right, you look at Arizona, they play super fast. They're an up-tempo offense. And you look at New Orleans, and they play a very slow game. They're 4th or 5th in time of possession in the NFL this year. So they're gonna run the ball. Even if Kamara can't go, they're gonna run the ball. We saw it last week with Latavius Murray. They're 4th in time of possession, 32.37 minutes here per game. That's what they're gonna do. They're gonna run the ball. They're gonna kind of dink and dunk. They're not gonna sling it with Teddy Bridgewater, and I don't think they care to get into a slinging war with anyone, to be honest with you. Their defense has been playing stout. One of the most underrated defenses in the NFL right now. No one's really talking about how good they play. I expect this to be a one-sided game. I really don't believe in the Cardinals. Against bad defenses, they're gonna get points on the board. It's gonna make it fun. But we saw how quickly this team can struggle. I agree with you on Edmonds, man. Number one, if David Johnson's ruled out, Edmonds is gonna be chalk. And this is to me the definition of chalk I'm willing to avoid, or bad chalk, because it's not a good game script. It's not a good matchup. He's not playing the Giants again, where he's going to run wild. And the price has gone up. He's in the mid sixes here on DraftKings. So I don't think I'm going to go there this week. And then as far as from the winners, you would want to get some pieces involved. I think Latavius Murray's in a good spot here. Obviously, Michael Thomas. The one guy that I'm keeping an eye on news, and he just hasn't been able to practice, is Jared Cook. Look, I know he hasn't lived up to expectations. I get all that, but this is a prime matchup against the Cardinals defense that has just been giving up the world. You and I could go on the field against the Cardinals, man, and probably get in the end zone. And I am very slow. I'll be honest with you. I can barely run. So it just goes to show you how bad this defense is, man. So I have more interest in the Saints side than I do in Arizona side. It's just because I respect the Saints defense a ton, and the type of football they play, it's just going to limit the opportunities for the offense for the Cardinals here.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. The Cardinals side of the football is not where I want to be in this game. The Saints, to me, are a little bit interesting, though. Right now, the Saints offense is very dependent on, well, it has been for most of the season, dependent on two guys. Michael Thomas sees a ton of volume. Alvin Kamara saw a ton of volume. And then everybody else just kind of has their 2 or 3 targets a game here, 2 or 3 catches a game there, stuff like that. So if Kamara can't play this week, Latavius Murray basically looked like he's kind of stepped into that role last week. So Latavius Murray and Michael Thomas would be the two guys that I would expect to see just a lot of volume. And again, against the Cardinals, the team that does play fast, it's going to give you a few more plays. So if you have a tight, tree of guys that get touches and now you're giving them a few more plays, they're going to be the ones that benefit the most from that. The one thing that gives me a little pause, how do you feel about the matchup for Michael Thomas? Because Patrick Peterson is back on the other side, a guy who has historically been one of the best shutdown corners in the game. I still feel like the volume is going to be there for Michael Thomas, but here's my real question for you. In order for us to get upside at the price out of Michael Thomas, he needs to have a big game, not just, 6 catches for 60 yards. Like he needs a touchdown, or he needs 100 yards, or he needs like 8 to 9 catches. Can he do that against Patrick Peterson? And are you a little worried about it? Would you still play him in cash? Is he more a GPP play? Or are you, I know you said you're playing him, so I'm not going to ask if you're avoiding him, but how much of a worry is that for you?
Look, it's a slight worry for me because we know how good Peterson can be. But Thomas has done it against some really good corners this year, man. He just, and when the volume is there, when I see these type of matchups, when there's a receiver as talented as Michael Thomas, and I think he's very talented, to me, it kind of balances it out. And if you're seeing 12, 13, 11, 10 targets per game, he's going to come down with maybe 6 or 7 of those in a matchup like this, where he would normally come down with 7, 8, 9. So I still think he's going to have a pretty decent floor. I do think maybe that seeding and that, high upside game is going to be limited here. But considering what I'm going to get out of him, I think he can do enough, to pay off that price tag. It is pretty high, but we're not talking about a 9K price tag, that he might have in a very good matchup. So, and I think the ownership, I think he's going to be low owned here. I really do. So I do think that helps out quite a bit here for me in my decision making.
Yeah, I'm probably still going to be playing some Michael Thomas this week as well. I also have the Saints in my super pool this week. That's one of the teams that I like. I know it's 10 points. I think I actually got it at 9.5 in the super pool earlier in the week, which I was very excited about. Listen, I think this defense is good enough to slow down, if not shut down, Arizona. And I think this offense, especially in this matchup against Arizona's defense, is good enough to put up some points. So I'm not too worried about taking a big number. And frankly, if you don't like big numbers, you shouldn't be sports betting this year, because the NFL, we've seen a lot of big numbers this year, more than I ever remember seeing. I feel like every week there's 3 or 4 double-digit spreads. And honestly, we've seen a lot of blowouts too, where those spreads have been covered. So I'm not as upset about taking a big number as I have been in the past in the NFL.
This game is a good. This is a game where I don't mind take the points here, because we have an offense that plays super fast, and then a good defense that's going to stop him most of the time, we think, and then an offense that is able to manage that clock. So I think the chances of that offense catching up to this, to the Saints, because I think the Saints are going to be able to put points on the board against the Cardinals, it's a little bit slimmer than, other situations we've talked about before. So I actually like this one, Benny.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I put it on there. I'm probably going to bet on it too as well. Usually do my bets on Sunday, and they're all going to be up over at, elitesportsbetting.com. So if you guys have, if you have a subscription over there, you got my picks. Are you on there? Are you making NFL picks right now over there as well?
I have not made, but I believe I have access to it, and I should go on there and make some picks.
Yeah, there's 7 or 8 guys over here on staff that are throwing up their picks, and I could tell you it's basically the exact stuff that we're betting on. I mean, it's we don't care if you guys tail us and win money with us. That's kind of the point. Yeah, that's basically what we're doing this for anyway.
Well,
so.
It's against the house. It's not
that's right. It's not my money you guys are winning right now, so I don't care. Take somebody else's money, and we can all take it together this way. When we go out for drinks, everybody can buy around. It'll be good.
Exactly.
All right, so from a game that has a couple offenses that we do kind of like and normally put up points, to one that has a couple offenses that are underperforming this year. Los Angeles Chargers, Chicago Bears. Bears are favored by 3.5. I don't know if they can score enough points to win a game by 3.5, to be honest. The over-under in this game is 41. Like I said, these are two offenses that I just absolutely hate. The one thing I'm going to throw out there, though, midweek injury report edition of Keenan Allen yesterday, which could wind up being a big situation. Like I said, he was just added yesterday. He practiced, I think, on Wednesday. Yesterday, for some reason, he didn't. We don't have the Friday reports up yet because it's like 9:15 in the morning right now while we're trying to do this on Friday. Definitely something I'm going to be keeping an eye on, though, because Keenan Allen is a high-usage piece of this team. He gets a lot of targets, somebody that, the Chargers kind of rely on. If he doesn't play in this game, it's going to open up a lot more targets for other guys. So let's talk about it, with that in mind, as well as, if he does play, how that would change some things for you, because I do really think there's a chance that he doesn't play this week.
Yeah, look, it's a hamstring injury. These are soft tissue injuries, and those linger, man, especially for these receivers that, are trying to run their routes and stuff. And not only can he might go, but that can pop up again during this game, especially if it was late in the week that this occurred. So definitely something to be keeping an eye on here. The first person that stands out to me is not Mike Williams. It's actually Hunter Henry, man. 8 and 9 targets in each of the last 2 games here. I think his usage is just going to bump up here. I think Eckler benefits as well in the passing game. And then you're talking about Mike Williams, another guy that's going to benefit if Allen is out, and truth be told, it's trending in that direction right now with the kind of injury and the time of the week it happened. Obviously, like you mentioned, there's no practice report, but I'd be stunned if he practiced today, to be honest with you, since he was held out yesterday. So, look, this is honestly a game that I kind of – and I don't like to get a game and say I'm not playing anyone there, but I didn't have much interest. Now that kind of changes for me because now I think guys like Hunter Henry in a tight end position we talked about that is very volatile and very difficult to find high volume. You're going to get high volume from Hunter Henry here. So that, to me, is going to change. Now it's time to keep an eye on this news. From the Bears side, I don't want to be redundant here and say I don't really care for anything, but it's just tough to like this offense, man. Like I was a big Allen Robinson guy heading into the season.
Yep.
Simply for the the usage, I'm not excited about the quarterback play there. Trubisky just there's something going on that we don't know. There's something off with him because I don't think he's this bad. I'm not saying he's a good quarterback by any means, but we're talking about. I think we're seeing his floor. I mean, I really do think we're seeing his absolute floor here. I know people are calling for his head, saying that they should do a change of quarterback here. I don't know if that's really going to help this offense that much, man. So not a ton from this offense. I actually think, the Chargers defense is interesting because of how much, we've seen this Bears offense struggle this year so far. But Hunter Henry's really the guy I'm most interested in considering the potential volume he's going to have here.
Yeah, Hunter Henry made it to the top of the list of one of my top tight end options on the tight end article this week. You mentioned that the guy's getting volume. It looks like it could be a situation where he even gets an increase in volume if Keenan Allen doesn't play. A lot of reasons why I would looking at that. Fantasy-wise, there's a 41 total in this game. It's two offenses that haven't really put up monster numbers this year. So I don't think you should be looking to have a lot of exposure to this game. I don't think that's actually the smart way to go play it. Next game where I do think a ton of exposure is going to be, especially if you look at any of the early ownership projections that are coming out. Seattle Seahawks, 6.5-point favorite on the road, going into the Dome to play the Atlanta Falcons here. Second highest total or actually the highest total of the games we're going to talk about here on the week. It's 53 right now. It started the week at 52, so it's actually even been trending up. Basically Chris Carson, Russell Wilson, Lockett, and Metcalf are all guys that are projecting for 15 to 25% ownership this week. I got to be honest, I can't really argue with anybody who wants to play him.
No, you cannot argue with that side of the ball. And look, Matt Ryan's status is going to play such a big role here for me, for both sides, because if Matt Ryan doesn't give it a go, I don't know if the Falcons can keep this one close at all, which is going to hurt, some of the seedings here. I think the slam dunk is Carson. I think regardless of game script, I think regardless of Matt Ryan playing or not, we're going to see Carson have a really, really good day. Atlanta is far from a good defense, especially against the run, especially against running backs. Chris Carson can catch passes in the backfield, and it's just been something over the years where Atlanta gives up those short, intermediate passes to the running backs. It's year in and year out, target pass catching backs against this Falcons defense, and you're going to get some production. Look, if Matt Ryan plays, I love the Seattle offense. I mean, from Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, you mentioned Metcalf, Carson. Definitely going to be some stacks involved. On the opposite side, without Mohamed Sanu now, you're going to, the big three in Hooper, Jones, and Ridley, I think they all see a pretty significant bump.
Much tighter target tree for those three guys right now.
Exactly.
So I kind of agree with you. I think this is going to be one of the most stackable games. I think a lot of people are just going to put – and I think from both, especially, I agree. The Matt Ryan point you made is 100% dead on. Like, if Matt Ryan plays, there's a good chance this game shoots out. Where we could see 4 touchdowns or more on both sides of it. So if you wanted to even onslaught game stack where you throw like 5 or 6 guys from this game in there, I don't think that would be crazy. Chris Carson, I'm going to just reiterate, my favorite play of the weekend, a guy that I've been riding all season and trying to get other people on board with. Whether you like it or not, the Seattle Seahawks look at themselves as a running team, and Chris Carson has clearly taken the lead in that backfield. Like, Rashard Penny is an afterthought at this point. Mm-hmm. Carson saw his biggest share of the snaps last week. He's had a couple games in a row now where he's seen monster, 20-touch kind of volume. He is an every down RB1. He's a top 10 running back in the league, and he's not being treated like one. I will say this, the daily fantasy community is getting smarter because he is the highest projected running back on the slate this week on both of the websites. DraftKings by a significant margin, FanDuel by a pretty decent margin as well. Like you said, he catches passes, he runs the ball, he gets in the end zone. A lot of things to like about Chris Carson here. Definitely somebody I'm going to have. And I do think you can game stack the hell out of this, where you take like Russ, take Tyler Lockett, take Metcalf, look at like Hooper or Julio or Ridley on the other side, like just – mix and match 2 or 3 guys from both sides of this game. I think that's a good way to go about it. It's going to be chalky. You're not going to be the only person doing it. So, guys like Ridley, guys like Metcalf, who might be a little bit lower owned, definitely guys that I'd be looking to include on some of those stacks. Because if you go Lockett, Julio, Russ, Carson, you're going to be one of about 10,000 other people that have that same lineup. So
it's true.
It's tough to win a GPP that way when you got like 6 of the same guys as 70% of the field. So just keep that in mind when you're building. Try to do something to make that lineup a little different.
I think Ridley's going to be the guy there. I think Ridley would be that odd man that could win a tournament for someone because he has that type of upside.
Yeah, he could catch 2 touchdowns. He's got that long touchdown ability where they use him down the field as well. So I don't disagree with you. Like I said, Ridley and Metcalf to me are the 2 guys that I'm trying to use because I think they'll be lower owned than Julio and Lockett. And to me, they have just as good a chance of catching, 2 touchdowns. They may not get the volume. They may see less targets than the 2 more heralded guys on their team. But when you talk about touchdowns, if they get the touchdowns, it doesn't matter if Julio sees 10 targets and Ridley sees 5. If Ridley gets in the end zone twice, he could outscore Julio. So that's the way I look at it. Interesting game here. Denver Broncos, an offense I don't really like. Indianapolis Colts, a team that I like a lot on both sides of the football this year. This is only a 5.5-point spread, which I love. This is one of my favorite bets of the week is taking Indianapolis in this one. Over-under on this game, though, is very low at only 43. So I don't expect this to be a great game for fantasy, but anything here that you're looking at?
Look, I'm going to start off with the covering. Look, the Colts are 4-1-1 against the spread this year. They've been covering.
Mm-hmm.
I like them a lot here as well. I think they're a far superior team. Here's another unit that without their star quarterback, and this happened before the season, has played really good football, man. Like underrated football here. They're doing it with the run game. Offensive line is phenomenal. Marlon Mack. Look, I know a lot of people don't like targeting, or they still have that belief that the Broncos defense is still great. They're not bad, but this is still a unit. They've allowed 5 rushing touchdowns already. We got an offensive line that dominates in the trenches here, a running back that they like to feed, a game script. So Marlon Mack, to me, it really stands out in this game. I'm a big Marlon Mack guy, though, so I might have a little bit of bias there, but I think his price is good. I think he has that 100-yard upside, multiple touchdown upside. And when you look at everything from the Vegas numbers, from the situation, from what kind of football this team is playing, he's the guy that really stands out to me in this game. On DK is 6,100. Pretty decent price, if you ask me. I know with him, it's all dependent on game script, and the fact that he doesn't catch passes out of the backfield a ton really caps his ceiling. But when you look at the last, a couple of games, 29 carries, 132 yards. Last week, 18 carries, 44 yards. But that was against a Houston team that can put up points. I don't see a situation here where Broncos are going to come and score a ton of points against the Colts. So I think Marlon Mack is a very, very sneaky tournament player this week. Definitely has the 100-yard and upside and touch and double the 2 touchdowns easily can occur here for him.
Yeah, I like Mac more on FanDuel because of that lack of catching passes stuff. But I kind of agree with you. I mean, this offensive line, the reason why people were so high in Indianapolis coming into this year is because we thought Andrew Luck was going to have the best offensive line he's ever had, the best defense he's ever had, and some solid weapons on the outside that he would be able to put up some points with. So, yeah, it sucks that Andrew Luck's not there. But, I mean, Jacoby Brissett was arguably the best, if not one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league. So, I mean, you're stepping in a guy who's already had experience there, who's already, been in the system for a couple of years now, who's already been a starter in this league. And you're giving him what he didn't have last time. You're giving him the protection of a good offensive line, a nice running game behind him, and a good defense where you're not asking him to go out there and win games by himself. You're just asking him to go out there and, play point guard and distribute the ball and not make mistakes and keep everybody on the right page. And he's done it pretty well this year. So Indianapolis, definitely a team I like. Agree with you on the Matt Cole. He's my favorite play in this game too. Another low-scoring game we got here. We got the New York Jets going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Basically my local team down by you, actually playing the Jags down in Jacksonville, a little bit north of where you are. Over under 40.5 in this game, so not a lot of offense projected here. I got to be honest, I'm a Jets fan. After watching the Jets get their asses beat by New England last week, while everybody was like, oh, yeah, the Jets are going to cover 9. I said, you guys are fucking crazy. The Jets are going to cover 9. There's no way that's going to happen this last week. I don't even know if I like the Jets to cover 6 this week against the Jaguars.
Look, I don't think it's going to be as bad as last week. This is very difficult because it opened at 5 and now it's at 6. So there's and supposedly I'm looking at the numbers here. There's 52% of the bets against the spread with the Jets here. So I'm assuming there's some pretty sharp money on the Jaguars.
That sharp money was 55% on the Jets against New England last week. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes the sharp money is not as sharp as you think it is.
Yeah, I would have. I really would. I don't think I would have done that, man, last week. That's crazy.
I'm a Jets fan, and I thought it was crazy. I'm like, these people are nuts right now.
Look, New England is playing some different football, man, that I don't think we've seen before. Even I don't think they're playing better than that 17-0 season that they had. Like honestly, like they're just clicking on all cylinders here. But to go back to this game, look, from a betting perspective, I don't think I'm going to be touching it at all. The Jaguars are tempted because they could definitely cover here, but I don't think we're going to see the bad Jets team that we saw last week. I just don't think we're going to see that. I think there's enough weapons on this offense, and we saw it against Dallas. They came out and punched them in the jaw, man, and no one was expecting that. So if we get that kind of offense this weekend, this is a game not only that they can keep close, they can actually go in and win. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but from a betting perspective, I'm skipping here. Leonard Fournette, obviously is someone you have to talk about whenever you speak about the Jaguars, man. It's a good matchup for him. That he's going to be able to, run against the Jets. He's going to get the volume. His involvement this year in the passing game has been something we haven't seen in the past from him. And I think that's really what's giving him that edge in fantasy where not only does he have now a very safe floor and something we never really talked about when it came to Fournette, but now he has a pretty high ceiling as well, man. So I really like the combination of, catch a pass out of the backfield and running the ball here for Fournette. So I like him. I like Le'Veon Bell on the other side too because, I know he's been struggling. The averages haven't been there. I expected that, going from an offensive line in Pittsburgh that was very dominant to a pretty poor offensive line here in the Jets. So I expected some changes, but he's still going to get the volume. This is a game that's not going to blow out like we saw last week. So we're going to see him be the security blanket there for Darnold. Going to run in between the tackles. So I also think a good game here. When you look at this, I'm expecting a slow game. I'm not expecting a very high, scoring or high-paced game here by any means. So I'm expecting both running backs to just get fed. And unless this game gets out of control, they both should see a good amount of touches here. Kind of where my interest is in this game.
Yeah, I'm of the same mindset. I mean, you have two guys here that are the workhorses on their team. Both guys seeing, like close to 90% or over 90% of snaps in a lot of these recent games. They're both used pretty heavily in the passing games for their team, as well as being the guys that get the touches, the rushes, the goal line carries, like everything that you really look for. So I'm not very high on the passing game for either side of this one. But if I am interested at all, it's going to be in those running backs. I prefer Leonard Fournette to Le'Veon Bell. I hate to say that, but that's the way that I'm looking at it. You always like the home running back, the favorite running back. There's just so many things that are more in Leonard Fournette's favor than Le'Veon Bell's this week. But I do like the running backs. I agree with you there. The next game is a little bit of an interesting one. I kind of like this game fantasy-wise. I think there's going to be some upside here. Tampa Bay Buccaneers going up against the Tennessee Titans. Titans at home. Titans favored by 3, over under 46. Mariota's going to be on the bench again. We're going to get some more Ryan Tannehill, but Ryan Tannehill actually looked like a boom for those wide receivers. I've been telling people for a long time that Corey Davis is actually a talented guy. And I think now that he actually has somebody who's not afraid to actually throw the ball to him, we could be seeing a breakout coming. That might have been the first of a bunch of breakout games coming for Corey Davis here.
Look, I couldn't agree more with you about Davis, man. He's someone that I liked heading into the season in season-long leagues. At his price, he was going very cheap. Talented receiver. He hasn't been able to put it together, but I also don't think he's had the fair chance to in this offense. They really, Mariota's always hurt. Someone that's afraid to take shots downfield. This is a run-first, offense as well. So a lot of things have not played in his favor. When you look at what you saw this team last week, they looked totally different. When you look at the numbers, everything was different. It just looked like they were clicking. I think this opens up the run game. Tampa Bay is another one of those defenses that kind of funnels to the pass. So I think they can put up points against the Titans as well. So I'm expecting this game to be a little bit of a kind of sneaky shootout here. For I think both of these offenses. It's just, what's going to happen here, Benny? It depends on what Jameis Winston we get. That's really what's going to be the determining factor.
Isn't that always the question with Tampa Bay, though? That's like the question every week.
Is it going to be good Jameis or bad Jameis? If it's good Jameis, man, we saw him light up good defenses before. I mean, we've seen it before. I think he can do it here. Look, the receivers that they have in Evans and Godwin go really well against what the weakness is for the Titans, and that's the big plays. Mike Evans and Godwin both can create big plays. That's where the Titans struggle. Like these two wideouts, I think they kind of go under the radar here. Like Jameis Winston. On the other side, look, I like Derrick Henry. I know it's not an ideal situation for him, but I think he's going to get goal line opportunities because I think this Tennessee offense is going to be able to move the ball. Mm-hmm. And we saw some last week for him and just didn't, go in. And then you mentioned Davis, Brown. They have also receivers that can catch the ball here, can make big plays. I think this is a sneaky game from a DFS perspective. Now, the only thing from betting, both of these teams are 2-4. I think 2-4-1 against the spread, so kind of makes it difficult to like at either of these two. We got Tampa coming off a bye, something to consider there. And look, I know Tannehill. I watched him here in Miami. Mm-hmm. What we saw last week, you're going to see that. Then you're going to see bad Tannehill as well. It's just like what we talked about, Jameis. It's good or bad. It's going to happen. But I do think this offense is better suited with Tannehill than it is with Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that one. The one thing I'm going to add here, Tampa Bay, you mentioned they're kind of a funnel defense. They're a huge funnel defense.
Yeah.
They're good against the run. They've been shutting people down. They've actually limited Christian McCaffrey to 2 of his worst games on the year so far this season. So this is definitely a team. If you can stop McCaffrey, you can stop anybody, because to me, he's the most dynamic running back in the league. So I do think that Derrick Henry is going to struggle in this game. I mean, again, if you have him, you're probably still starting him in season long. If you want to take a chance on a site like FanDuel, because he does still have the touchdown upside, like you mentioned. But I don't think we're going to see like 125 yards rushing from him today. I think they're going to kind of keep that bottled up. But that's why I like the passing game, because I think they're going to have to go to the air. We don't know if Delaney Walker's going to play, so Jonnu Smith could be a cheap guy that we look at here. Tannehill's pretty cheap. You mentioned both of the wide receivers, and Brown and Davis. I think they're both pretty cheap. And that's the thing, is like Tampa Bay can score against anybody with those receivers on the outside. So if those guys start putting up some touchdowns, and then Tennessee starts throwing the ball and they start putting up some touchdowns, I could see this turning into a little bit of a shootout. I could see this being a 28-24 game or a 35-28 kind of final, where one or both of these quarterbacks throw for 3 or 4 touchdowns. So I like a lot of the receivers here. I like the quarterbacks here. I agree with you. I think this is a sneaky shootout game that I'm going to have a lot of exposure to, or at least a decent amount of exposure to in daily fantasy.
Yeah, I think there's great value here. There's just so much good value here.
That's the thing. A lot of these guys are kind of cheap, more so on the Tennessee side than the Tampa Bay side. I mean, you're not getting Evans and Godwin at a discount anymore, but
but you're going to get an ownership discount, so that's good.
Yeah. So you use one of those 2 guys, you throw a couple Tennessee guys in there. It's a nice way to build GPP lineups this week.
Yeah.
So next game, talk about Carolina against the vaunted San Francisco 49ers defense. Here's where it is. San Francisco's at home. They're favored by 6, 42.5 total. They added Emmanuel Sanders. Everybody on that offense kind of touches the ball. So fantasy-wise, it's not the best spot. Their defense is really good, so fantasy-wise against them is not the best spot. Here's the big question I'm going to ask, though. Christian McCaffrey has been a superstar this year. Christian McCaffrey has been a fantasy stud this year. The San Francisco defense has shut down everybody this year. Can we still play Christian McCaffrey? Should we still play Christian McCaffrey? And will you be playing Christian McCaffrey?
Right now, man, I respect this San Francisco defense quite a bit. I don't think I'm willing to pay up for McCaffrey this week. They haven't yet allowed a rushing we're going to see what this defense is made up this week for sure. And then we're going to see, can McCaffrey put up numbers against really strong defense? Something's going to give this weekend for sure. Mm-hmm. I'm not willing to pay $9,200 on DraftKings to find out, though, man. I think that's a bit pricey. If he was like mid-8, I know it sounds silly, only a couple hundred, but if he was mid-8, I'm considering this, because we know the usage, we know the volume, and we know the ceiling. Problem is he needs at $9,200, price tag, he kind of needs to have a ceiling game or very close to it to really pay that off. And it's just so difficult to predict that happening against such a stout defense. They have not allowed a rushing touchdown this year. I mean, to me, that's mind-blowing. Mm-hmm. We're almost midway through we're going to be midway through the season now. And 450 rushing yards, 0 rushing touchdowns allowed by this unit. Just stout. And they're not only stout against the run, they're stout against the pass. So they're going to create bad opportunities and bad situations for this offense with a young quarterback. That's kind of what we forget. So it's going to be a very predictable game script for this defense to play against the Panthers. So that's kind of what really scares me here. I'm not saying McCaffrey cannot get it done, because we've seen him get it done. But look, he struggled against the Bucs, like you mentioned, and that's another really good run defense. Some of the numbers after looking at it, they're stout too, So it's like, I think at that price tag, it's very difficult to plug him in. I mean, I get why people would, because the volume and that seating, but just tough to get it in.
Yeah, I like sports betting wise. I do like teasing San Francisco down to a pick 'em here from -6, because I do think they're going to win this game. Fantasy wise, though, I don't really have a lot of exposure. I think the way San Francisco's offense plays, everybody kind of gets a little taste. So nobody's going to come up with those monster games. Kittle being the highest volume guy, and this is not really the greatest matchup overall for him. And then I don't want to play anybody against his defense. And I've been a guy that's been like, jamming Christian McCaffrey and figure everything else out after he's in your lineup all season long, whenever he's been on the main slate especially. I'm not that guy this week. He's not somebody that I'm using. I'm not using him in cash for like the first time all year. Still love Christian McCaffrey. If you have him in season long, you're still playing him. But this is not, in daily we get the choice of, do we want to play him this week or do we want to go somewhere else with our cash? I want to go somewhere else with my cash. I'm not playing him. So next game is another one that could turn out to be just as ugly with another defense that has been shutting people down. Cleveland Browns against the New England Patriots. Patriots are an 11.5-point favorite currently. Over-under is 46. Josh Gordon just put on the injured list. They brought in Mohamed Sanu. Not sure how many snaps we'll see him play this week, but they do kind of need him because they are very thin at wide receiver. Cleveland is just an absolute shit show. So what are you thinking about for this game?
Yeah, look, with New England, another high spread here, and it's crazy. They opened up as 10.5-point favorites. They're 13-point favorites now, man.
What are you looking at? Where are they 13 at? The Vegas?
I'm looking at I'm looking at Labs here.
Okay.
I'm looking at Labs, and I see that, and then I'm seeing 67% of the bets here against the spread with New England. I talked about not liking high spreads. This is a team that I don't mind taking them. Why? Because they run up the score. It doesn't matter. Yeah. They like to run up the score. They don't slow down. They don't make the mistake that so many other teams, pretty much every other team in the NFL makes. And they don't slow down. They just keep playing at that high pace, that high offense. They're attacking at all times.
And for the first time this year, their defense is arguably better than their offense. So, their defense, this is why I don't mind taking a big spread on them either, is when you have a defense that's really good, that when you get a lead and teams are forced to pass against you, like even on the other side, they don't give up on the other side on defense either. They're not going to drop into a prevent and let you just go up the field and have a chance to get back into games. When they put their foot on your throat, they step down hard, and then after you're dead, they kick you to make sure that you're still dead, And we've seen the defense do it a couple times where they go up 14, 17 points, and just for good measure, the defense grabs another interception and runs it back to make it 21 or 24 at the end of the game. So I'll lay any amount of points with the New England Patriots. I mean, they've won games by 30. They haven't given up more than, I think, 14 points in any game all year. And that 14 points was by my Jets, and it was on a punt return and a defensive interception pick six. So it's not even like it was a defensive –
Exactly.
You cannot score on this team, and the offense is just such a well-oiled machine that they're going to put up their 3 or 4 touchdowns every game, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, from a betting perspective, you got to think that. And then DFS, again, it's such to say it's a one-sided game here. Look, I've watched a couple of Baker Mayfield games this year, and something that stands out to me is he doesn't take the down low pass. He wants to sling it every single time.
He wants a home run every time.
And that is going to be such a big mistake against this defense that they're going to capitalize off that. I would not be at all surprised to see him throw a couple picks, like at all, because not only is he going to feel that he has to chase points because they're going to be trailing, but then he's one-dimensional and he's trying to take the deep ball every single time, and that's going to hurt him against a defense like this. So no interest there for me, man. Can he have a good game? Of course, because I think he's going to have to throw a ton. So, yeah, he can rack up. He could throw 3 interceptions, 400 yards, and 2 touchdowns in this game and come out with decent fantasy numbers, but I don't think it's going to be, in a pretty fashion here. Obviously, everyone in New England is in play. You got Julian Edelman, probably the safest of the bunch. Yep. James White, Sony Michel. It's just very difficult to predict who's going to have a seeding game. The one that always makes sense to me is my answer to every New England question is Julian Edelman. That's who it is. That's probably the safest store. Look, I'm not willing to experiment with Mohamed Sanu this week and to see how they're going to use him. We know that this offense, you have to gain Brady's trust, and I'm not saying he's not going to gain it because I do think this is a really good situation for both sides, for Sanu and the Patriots now that they're together. But I'm not willing to figure it out this week, especially in a game where I really don't think they need to put him out there and, run a ton of routes. I can totally see him, getting him into the, flow of things, but I don't think they're going to feature him. At least I don't expect them to.
Yeah, I mean, the problem I always have with the Patriots is that everybody gets a taste, right? It's kind of like we talked about with San Francisco. If you're looking for a guy to go off, I think Sony Michel is the guy that has the most upside because of the touchdowns and the fact that, And again, you got to look at what's happening with Rex Burkhead too, because with Burkhead out, we've seen Sony Michel's kind of snap share go up a little bit. We've actually even seen him catch a couple passes, which is something I never thought I would see out of him.
Yeah.
You're still getting the 8 or 9 targets in most of the passing downs with a guy like James White, but I think they kind of realize, like, hey, if all we ever do is hand the ball to Sony Michel, then teams are going to know what we're doing every time he's in the game, as opposed to James White. And Belichick's too smart to do that and put added pressure on his offense by making it that obvious. So they started throwing him the ball a little bit. I think there's a lot more upside there with him. As far as betting, I'm laying, I got 11.5 is what I got on it. I would be willing to lay the 11.5 with the Patriots. I think they're just going to absolutely be, put it this way. If Sam Darnold was seeing ghosts, Baker Mayfield's going to be seeing going to be putting it out there for him.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that because that's your guy, man. I didn't want to be talking about goals.
Not my guy. I'm not that big a fan, to be honest with you. He's got enough to prove to me.
But Baker Mayfield is 100% gonna be seeing ghosts this week, man.
Yeah, 100%. It's gonna be. I do not expect a good game for him or for the passing game for them. But hey, I mean, New England's defense is good. We've been saying this for a couple of weeks now. So last game we're going to talk about here, we'll save the Sunday and Monday night games for the guys on the live stream tonight. So if you're an Elite Fantasy subscriber, make sure you hop in tonight. You're going to have Mans and Tommy. I think 7 o'clock that goes off. Knowing Tommy, he'll probably need a cigarette at 6:59, so probably be more like a 7:10 start. But around 7-ish, they'll be there. I'll be in chat from 6 to 7. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to stop in over there as well and check it out. There is a half-season package for the Elite DFS. So if you haven't gotten in already, you want to come check it out. I think there's a monthly package active as well. You can come see all the articles from all of us guys that have been on the shows in the past couple weeks. Everybody over there kind of does 2 or 3 things a week. This way, some of us actually get a little bit of sleep. Right now, I got basketball and football going on, so I'm not getting much sleep. But I'm going to let you talk about this one. Oakland Raiders going in to take on the Houston Texans. 6.5 points the Houston Texans are favored by. Over-under is 51.5. One piece of news I wanted to throw out there. Well, 2 pieces of news, really. Will Fuller is out, and we know that for a fact. So Fuller is not going to be playing in this game. On the other side for Oakland, though, Josh Jacobs hasn't practiced this week, which could be a big miss if he's not able to play. So how are you looking at this, and how concerned are you with those 2 injuries?
To me, the Josh Jacobs one is very, very big. Will Fuller, they're going to plug in. Kenny Stills going to pretty much take on that role. And I think this offense is going to just be going as smooth as they've been going in the passing game. So I'm not at all concerned. I think Watson's a great play here against the Raiders. To be honest with you, I like the passing game for Houston here quite a bit at home against a Oakland Raiders defense that kind of is generous through the air here. So like them. The big news, like you mentioned, is Josh Jacobs. Like, if he does not go, you also have, Jalen Richard dinged up as well. He was limited with an ankle injury in practices. So this offense might become just like one-dimensional this weekend. And that is very tough because, we say, oh, it's great, but defenses are able to prepare for that, I'm not willing here to take a chance on, some of these other running backs for Oakland at all, even though they're coming at a discounted price. It's just very difficult to trust, not only because we can see Houston, take a lead and they're going to abandon the run game, but because we just don't know how they're going to be utilized this weekend. So not a situation I'm going in. Really, obviously the player in Oakland that you want a piece of, I know his price is up, but Darren Waller, Tyrell Williams is also questionable for this week.
I thought he's going to play, actually. I think Tyrell Williams is expected to play this week.
Is he expected to play?
Yeah, that's a big piece of news, too. I wanted to make sure we threw that out.
Because I know he was limited on Thursday, but the fact that he's out there, I guess, is good news. But if he does play, I still think – look, if he plays, I think Williams and Waller are pretty much where everything is going to funnel to if Jacobs is out. I really do. If Jacobs is in, those are the 3 guys anyways that you're going to see the volume in the production. This is a situation where I expect the Raiders to be chasing points. I expect them to pass. And Waller, once again, is a prime play just because we know the volume is coming. We know the ceiling he offers. We know the floor he offers. I think it's with offenses like this, it's very easy to pinpoint where the production and the volume is going to come from. It's very transparent. Then when you look at Houston, man, it's weird because they're running the ball with Hyde a ton, and I've been finding that, pretty mind-blowing. Last week they did abandon the run, but they weren't involved in a little shootout there with the Colts. But prior to that, 26 runs against the Chiefs, scored a touchdown. Prior to that, 21 run against the Falcons, 60 yards and a touchdown. So this is another game where he's, very cheap. I just don't think he has a ton of upside, not a high ceiling, but very cheap. The game script should favor him. So I do think that they're going to be utilizing him. I just not someone that I like rostering a ton just because of the limited upside, man. But DeAndre Hopkins, obviously a great play, like he is every single week. I know people, he's not that receiver anymore. Yeah, he is, man. He is the lead receiver, man.
Let's talk about this a little bit because I have a pretty strong take on this, right?
Okay.
So Will Fuller being out last week, we finally saw DeAndre Hopkins put up the game that we all expect from DeAndre Hopkins. And like you said, it's not like he's been playing bad. He's still getting targets. He was still doing it. It's just the targets he were getting they were short targets underneath because, that was just – that was what was open for him. Fuller was the guy who was making more of the plays downfield. I really think that people need to understand, like, during the season – there are ups and downs, right? You're going to have teams that get hot and look like they're unbeatable, like the Chiefs for the first couple of weeks. And then you're going to have teams that get cold, like the Chiefs the next couple of weeks, where they look like, God, how did this team even win 3 or 4 games? And that's the same thing with players. There are players that sometimes will go out there and just put up like a touchdown for 5 straight weeks and catch 8 or 9 passes for 100-something yards. And then teams will start saying, all right, we have to take this guy away, and they'll start doubling him. And then one of the off receivers or one of the backs or the tight end will start having a big game because now that's the guy who's being left in one-on-one coverage or they're shading so much over the top that all the underneath stuff is open. That stuff happens all the time in the NFL. The NFL is all about adjustments, right? I mean, we watch game film and we say, all right, this guy's good, that guy's good. Coaches are watching game film and doing the same thing as we can't beat this team unless we shut this down. So let's shut this down and force this guy to beat us. Or let's take this away and force that to happen. And I think people just got out of the fact of realizing, like, DeAndre Hopkins is one of the most talented wide receivers in the league. He's one of the most targeted wide receivers in the league. Just because the numbers hadn't been there, the yardage and the fantasy points, doesn't mean that the numbers that really matter, snaps, targets, those numbers are still the same. So it's just like last year he had 15 red zone targets. This year up until last week he had 1. Sooner or later, that's going to turn around. He's going to end the season with 9 or 10. It's like we talk about with the back of the baseball card every year. Like the guy that hits 300 is going to end up hitting 300, whether he's at 400 right now or 200 right now. Those numbers are going to come together over the longer period. It's the same thing for football. A guy like DeAndre Hopkins is going to finish with a bunch of touchdowns. He's going to finish with a bunch of catches. He's going to finish with a bunch of yards. They may come at the middle of the season, the end of the season, the beginning of the season, but sooner or later they're going to come. So Hopkins, to me, is a guy that I think people are overlooking. He's actually my number 1 receiver, even over Mike Thomas this week, which I know is not a popular opinion, but that's why I'm doing it in tournaments.
Look, I couldn't agree more. I saw not too long ago a tweet, someone telling Jeff Matz, hey, when are you going to take, Hopkins out of the top 5 in your rankings for week-to-week purposes? Look, he's a top 5 receiver every single week. Like, let's just face it. The volume is there. Something that you mentioned that really stands out, the type of targets he's getting this year compared to the type of targets he's gotten in the past. Mm-hmm. I went back just while you were talking. 2017, his ADOT was 13.9. Yep. Last year, ADOT was 12. This year's ADOT is 10.3. So the quality of targets are totally different. That right there shows where the production is slacking. When was the last time you see a guy like Hopkins get 12 targets, catch 9 of them for 55 yards? That's what happened the week before last against
That's a tight end line. That's a tight end line. 9 for 55 is a tight end line.
Correct. We know that that's not going to occur. Why was it happening? Well, like you mentioned, Will Fuller was the one stretching the field. He was the one going out for the deep passes. He was the one getting those targets that Hopkins get. Now without Fuller, I think we're going to see we're going to see more ceiling games from Hopkins and the more upside that we've been expecting all season long. I tweeted something out yesterday, just pretty much echoing what you're saying about some players start out slow, some players start out fast. You trust the process that you. For all of your research, man. And I said that with Diggs. I was very high on Diggs. He started off the season struggling. And over the last, 4 games now, just falling. Look, he started off slow. It is what it is. this offense had a different identity then than it has now. You know, there's still a run-first offense, but now they're passing the ball a little bit more. It's just the way it is. And you just have to trust the process, man. Look, Hopkins, I'm on board with you. I think Hopkins is probably the best, price not included one. I just think the best play this week. You know, when you consider the upside, when you consider the floor, when you consider the matchup, when you just consider everything, I think he's the best play this week. I'm with you. Look, as much as I like Thomas, I'd rather pay for Hopkins at the receiver position. I really would. 8,100 on DraftKings. I just think a great matchup. I think the overall game script is just going to be better for him here than it is for the Saints. I think the Saints could get away with it.
And it's a 51.5 total. Like, you know, this is the second biggest total after the Seattle-Atlanta game that we've talked about on this Sunday slate, you know, at least a Sunday slate for the main slate for DFS action that's going to be out there. So there's going to be a lot of points put up in this game. But I'm glad that you mentioned Stephon Diggs, because the last thing we got to do today before we sign off is our big piece of chicken. And after the way you've been talking about him even before we signed on to the show today, kind of have a feeling I know who your big piece of chicken from last night is.
It'll be Stephon Diggs, man. Feed that man. Keep feeding that man. Just keep on.
He gets all the big pieces of chicken. Just give him
all of them, man. The whole thing. The whole chicken.
Yeah. So I'm going to go over to the NBA for my big piece of chicken last night, and I'm going to give it to my boy who made us a little bit of money last night, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. 30 points he put up, 13 rebounds, 11 assists. So we got the triple-double. They got the win over Houston. After being down in the first half by like 15, 18 points in that game, they stormed back to it. And they played like the last 6 minutes of that game without Giannis on some really ticky-tack fouls that he fouled out on, which is really kind of annoyed me going on there. But, Corey and I talked about it yesterday, and we talked about it last year during the playoffs all the time. Giannis' rebound total was 12.5 last night. He finished with 13, and he didn't even play the last 6 minutes of that game. This guy is just a monster when it comes to the rebounds. And for some reason, Vegas just refuses to put up – like his rebound total every game should be 14.5. And I think they're just afraid to put a number up that big, because I think they'll think everybody will just kind of, go on the bottom side of it, which is fine. Like, that's actually good for Vegas, because this guy is putting up 15, 18 rebound games when he plays the whole game. Think about that. He didn't play the last 6 minutes of this game, and he put up 30, 13, and 11. I mean, if you give him another 6 minutes of court time, like he was averaging over 2 fantasy points per minute. There's going to be some absolute monster stat lines. James Harden is the only guy I remember putting up 100 fantasy points. I'm going to go out on a limb and tell you guys right now that Giannis is going to put up a 100 fantasy point game by the end of the year. He's going to have a 35, 40 point, 20 rebound, 12 assists, 5 block and steal kind of game. And you're just going to be like, oh my God. To me, he's going to be the MVP again this year. He gets as many goddamn big pieces of chicken as he wants. I don't even know if they eat chicken over in Greece, but, however they do it, teriyaki or whatever sauce they put on it, set it up and give it to Giannis. He gets the big piece of chicken here for today. Anything else you want to add, or I'm going to sign us off if not?
No, man. Thank you for having me. It's a blast. Sorry if I talked a little too much, man. I love talking sports, bro. So
there's no way you could talk too much on a Friday doing NFL, because everybody out there is going to be – you got all day Saturday to put your teams together. They're going to need the information. Show went a little longer than we normally do, but packed with information for you guys for sports betting and fantasy. So make sure you get out there. Make sure you make some money this week. Please, help us out by liking and sharing the video over here. This way they let Armando and I keep our jobs, and this way we can keep talking about sports. So we like that. So for Armando Marçal, I'm Ben Ricciardi. This has been The Opening Line, signing off.